Hi everyone, Garrett Gunderson here. Thanks for joining us on the State of Wealth today. Excited to share this with you. For those that have been on in the past, I'm going to create a context that we've talked about before, go a little bit deeper, then share something that I really haven't shared other than within our own organization and recently at one of our legacy events, which had a pretty intimate crowd. So in the context of the economy being uncertain, us having such a long period of time since the last recession and not really experiencing this in the past, and things feeling overvalued. We get the question all the time, where should I invest my money? And with the concept of win then play, which is different than playing not to lose, which some people are in that state right now because they're like, everything's overvalued. I'm just sitting on the sidelines. I'm going to scrimp. I'm going to save. I'm going to budget because I'm scared. Then there's people playing to win saying, I'm just going to go harder, more aggressive, do as much as I can, and hopefully I'm going to get there, but at the cost of exhaustion and possibly being too aggressive and taking on risk. This is really about win then play. How do you profit first? Profit up front. How do you make money without it requiring money? When people tell you it takes money to make money, those are people that truly want your money. And it doesn't take their money to make money, it takes other people's money to make money. So how can we make money off resources or being resourceful? How can we take stagnant assets and actually turn those into profitable, cash flowing types of things? And rather than look at the investment world from stocks, bonds, and real estate, or tax liens, or oil investing, or IPOs, or hard money lending, or any of those types of factors, I like to consider today, where can you take the ideas inside of your head and be profitable with those through something called the cycle of creation? So we're going to look at the cycle of creation in two formats. Number one, how can you create that momentum and profit up front? Number two, how can you use this as a way to invest that doesn't require coming up with money out of your pocket or taking risk outside of yourself, but something you have more control over because you're in the driver's seat of creation. I'm Garrett Gunderson. I think most of you know me by now. I'm a New York Times bestselling author of Killing Sacred Cows, What Would Rockefellers Do, 5-Day Weekend, and working on a book called Win Then Play. Really about 12, 13 years ago, I developed a methodology called the cycle of creation. And it was really about how do you further cultivate an idea and maximize that asset? How do you address the liabilities associated with that so they don't eat you alive when there's a cash flow crunch or when everything isn't going according to plan? And how do you tap into existing resources that could provide a way to accelerate the results, minimize the risk, and be profitable quicker? And then where can you figure out the best ways to derive income, understand and identify the expenses, and then be crystal clear about the profitability and the production, when it's going to happen, what the risks are to that, so that you know what the win looks like. And so I did this when we wrote Killing Sacred Cows and pre-sold 22,000 copies of the book before it was ever released. I did this when we created our first video series called Fast Track on Demand by getting $150,000 before ever filming the first video. This is something that you can do as well as a business owner before getting persuaded into investing in things outside of your expertise, outside of what we would call your investor DNA, which is your core values and those things most important to you, your core competencies in those areas where you have the most ability, and then your core drivers, which is what really has a passion and interest, where you're saying, hey, this is something that I get excited about. And when we combine those three factors and really dial that in, you become a better investor. So part of investor DNA is investing in outside investments. But there's this other way to utilize investor DNA, which is investing inside of your own business and within your own control. And a lot of the money can be made by creation, essentially. So before we get to the cycle of creation, we're going to use a tool called the value equation. And the value equation, when you really understand it, means that if you think you have a money problem, it's never truly a money problem. Money's a symptom of a deeper problem, or if you can write a check and it goes away, you've already solved the problem. So really what drives all financial capital in the world are two other more precious forms of capital. The first one being our mental capital. Our mental capital is our ideas, knowledge, wisdom, tools, strategies, insights. It's all that knowledge that we have in our brain. And when we take that mental capital and we build a bridge between the mental capital to relationship capital through service, solving problems, and delivering value, the byproduct is going to be money. So relationship capital is subscribers, members, clients, customers, whatever you want to call them, friends, family, mentors. It's the people in your life that you reach either because you have a direct relationship with, or a digital relationship with, or an indirect relationship with because you've improved their life somehow through your company and the things that you've created. And so that bridge between the two is really business. And so when we add either mental or relationship capital to each of the 4 phases in the cycle of creation, you can advance that, increase your profitability, and increase scalability. But if we begin and lead with mental capital, we can scale without taking unnecessary risk. I love to think of scale as putting a ladder against a building, letting go of one rung before grabbing the next rung. If we let go first, then we're not exhausting ourselves by trying to handle too much, where we get overwhelmed, we can't grip anymore, and we're at risk of falling. So we let go of something through delegation before we grasp something which is our highest and best use of what we can contribute out there in the world. So in the cycle of creation, it doesn't really matter as much about the economy, because if the economy is changing in this process, you'll get immediate feedback. If you're going to initiate something, you're going to have the funds from the very people that are wanting the benefit from it. Unfortunately, far too many business owners take advice, get feedback from people who don't write checks, who are not their actual customers. Maybe that's family and friends. Maybe that's even groups that they go out to online or through AdWords or whatever they might do. And these are people that would never write them a check, and they think because they say, yes, I like that, or I would do that, that it actually means something. In this cycle of creation, we're going to show you how someone who can write you a check before you've actually created something can help build that momentum and be more momentous in as far as a profitability. Because what I love about this is this gets rid of the shareholder model of venture capital. See, when people are trying to get venture capital, a lot of times they might have an amazing idea, and if they go fund it with investors who are not connected to that idea, meaning they're not the actual end user, they're simply a hedge fund or an investment fund, or venture capitalists are saying, we'll give you money and this is what we expect of you. Now they might fund 10 people and only expect 1 to hit a home run, maybe 2 or 3 to hit singles or doubles, and the rest of them to fail. And they might even be on a track of actually succeeding. And that venture capitalist says, we don't care, it's not going to be big enough, you're not growing fast enough, you're not doing what we want, and they could squash that. It's highly risky. It's very cutthroat. And that's where this term shareholder value starts to come out, which is not really value creation. See, value creation is that service, that solving problems, that impact of an individual and an end user in a win-win scenario. Win-win because you benefit first and foremost, because they actually pay you. They benefit because of the value that they receive, and both parties end up better off. In the venture capital world, shareholder value might strip out the value from the actual end user and only go to the shareholders versus that end user, because they're looking at where can they get a niche where it becomes so reliant upon them and his organization protecting intellectual property and then confiscating wealth long-term from the end user simply so the shareholders can make more money. I abhor that model. That is not what Wealth Factory is. We're 1 million entrepreneurs achieving and gaining economic independence, because we're not talking about the conglomerates and the big corporations that are up to a whole bunch of stuff and evading taxes rather than avoiding them and being involved in the political scene. We're simply talking about small businesses that employ more people than those big businesses and equipping them with the tools and the strategies, the techniques, and the financial wherewithal to improve the world and the end user that they're actually serving. So we get excited about that because this means you can change your family's financial future and your financial destiny by impacting the people that you serve. And the less that money feels complex, and the more you can learn how to profit quickly in adding more value and creating that momentum, the more likely you succeed, because you're stacking the odds in your favor. And even if the economy changes, you're getting immediate feedback along the way versus getting a bunch of funds that could get eaten up simply because the economy changed in the middle of the game while you're trying to play this game. So let's talk about the cycle of creation with the value equation. The cycle of creation begins when we have an idea. That idea is something that we might just have in our mind. We think, oh, this would be great. It'd be great if we created a wealth builders club. It'd be great if we created a Garrett's inner circle. That could be an idea. And if that's just in Matt's head or that's just in my head, that's what it stays an idea. But it becomes a concept once we've actually talked about it together, where we've shared it with someone else, where we've actually written it down in some type of outline, when we've started to write down the benefits, when we start to articulate it, it moves from idea to concept. So how do we move from this first phase of idea to concept in the cycle of creation? First and foremost is with mental capital. So you're simply asking the question, why is this idea valuable? Who values the idea? How can we deliver the most value to those people? Like, there's questions that we can give in that. And I'll just pull them up from the very model that I use here and just share them with you guys. So when this happens, so if we're in this first phase, then I'll just go through and ask up to 7 questions to determine the value of it. So let's see here. All right, first question would be something like, why is it valuable? Second is, who values it, just as I shared. Third is, can we leverage this idea with the existing infrastructure, framework, and team that's already in place? Fourth is, do we have the capacity to implement the idea ourselves? If not, is there someone that can do it for us? Are we inspired by the idea? Does it align with soul purpose? And soul purpose is your values, it's your abilities and your passions combined for the highest context of your living or your overall purpose. So is it aligned with your soul purpose so that you have more power behind it because you have more interest in it, because you have more capabilities? And if this idea were purchased in the marketplace, what would the experience of the customer be? So that's where we would start with the idea. Is that mental capital? But then the next way to develop mental capital is to ask about the liabilities. Do you have the time to support the idea? Do you have the necessary systems in place? Do you already have the resources for implementing? Do you have any areas where you're uncertain about the idea? Because if you are, it's time to add more mental capital or relationship capital, right? Are there areas of the idea that drain your energy? Once again, is there mental capital that can help you with that, or relationship capital? What areas aren't aligned with your sole purpose? That's a delegation question, right? Are there holes in your teams that would prevent implementation of the idea? Better to know now rather than to get in the midst of it and get exhausted or have it fragmented or destroy bandwidth. And do you have any internal beliefs that this idea isn't possible and that you're not fully bought in? Are there areas where you're interested but not really committed? There's a big difference between interest and commitment. Like if I called my wife, she's in Austin right now, and I said, hey babe, just want to let you know I love you. I hope you have a great trip. I'm 80% committed to our relationship. She'd probably get back on the flight and get right home and say, what do you mean? You're either 100% committed or you're none, right? You can't be 80% committed. So those are just some of the initial questions to move from idea to concept. Now there's 4 phases we're going to go through. Idea to concept is really that first one. But we also want to say, are there existing systems that can allow you to deliver that idea? How can you create certainty around the implementation of it? What people do you know with expertise and passion, right? Adding relationship capital. And how can you market this idea before the product's even created? There is the win then play question. How can you market the idea before it's even created, right? What mediums of leverage exist to deliver the idea? Is it podcasts, TV, books, people, forums? And do you have a strategy or solution that overcomes or addresses every liability of the idea? And then just imagine the entire thing implemented and start working backwards. So that really formalizes this concept. So in the win then play economy, where we don't know what's going to happen in the economy, we just know that it feels overvalued and a bit scary right now. And when we use win then play to guide us through investing, we can invest when it comes to our ideas and being profitable with our ideas, not just products, not just funds and not just real estate and not just those kind of things, but really looking at inside of your business, what can you add value to with your existing clientele and customers? What's missing that they would love for you to provide? Is there a way that you can provide this profitably from day one? Those are some of the upfront questions. We went through the assets of that idea, the liabilities and the resources, because we're adding mental and relationship capital to move from an idea to a concept. Now you can be profitable in the concept phase. You can say, okay, I wrote this book, I want to write this book, Killing Secret Cows, but before I've written it, why don't I start doing webinars? Why don't I start doing, some outlines? Why don't I start doing some guides? And why don't I pre-sell those? And then if people buy them now, they can get the book later, right? That's a way that we could test the marketplace with people that are writing checks. And so what if you did this with any concept that you've created, is that you actually use the people that would benefit the most from it by offering it today, offering them a chance to grab it as a pre-offer, pre-sell, pre-order, because people do this all the time. We pre-buy our tickets to concerts, to sporting events before the event ever happens. It's just scheduled and they're committed to that schedule and we can count on that. If you have that level of integrity, you can say, look, there will be an event in the future or a product in the future. You could buy it now. And we see sites like Indiegogo and Kickstarter all over the place, sites like this, where you can start getting the very people that want to utilize it become the very people supporting it. So cycle of creation, moving from idea to concept, is the first part. Add mental and relationship capital. But here's the magical piece. If you can move from concept to framework, that's a game changer. Concept to framework. Framework is where you start sketching this out, where other people can come and support, because there's roles that they can take in building this out. There's projects they can take and be in control of to actually help it to get implemented. There's people that come in, and some people like Matt Mullenweg, who I met in 2008, he's got his very people that pay him as like non-compensated employees, because there's over 54,000 plugins to WordPress. He's the founder of WordPress, that is created open source by the very people that said, this is what I'd like to see happen, then other people can benefit from that. Think about win then play from that standpoint, right? So where in your life can you win then play? Like the very book we're writing, Win Then Play, is going to be our way to win then play. We're going to be pre-selling the book before it's done. We've already done a 3-part webinar series. We've had those transcripts edited. We're even doing this today that we might throw in, and those kind of things where people can buy it ahead of time. They can be part of a readers group and give me feedback, and they could be the very people that start implementing if we create workbooks or workshops or anything like that, because they're using it, right? So idea to concept to framework. Framework is where true delegation exists. I remember being in Las Vegas 14, 15 years ago. Trump Tower hadn't gone up in Vegas, but Trump was giving a speech about how he's going to build the most magnificent, hotel there, no casino, so it was going to be, more quiet, better place to sleep, blah, blah, blah. He was saying all these things. He was never going to lift a hammer. He wasn't going to draw the architectural plans. He was simply selling the vision. And if you have a concept that's so compelling that it will catalyze other people to support it, you can actually, that's your way to invest, is in that clarity and by thinking. And then people say, great, I would love to support that. If you watched, there's a couple movies on Steve Jobs, one of the early ones that Ashton Kutcher played him, there was a whole scene about people being around at Apple for years when he had been gone, just hoping he would come back. And they wanted to be there because of the vision and the concepts that he would actually bring about. But then the frameworks, he wasn't the one doing the work. He wasn't the one building it with his hands. There were other people doing that. He was just responsible for that concept and vision that was compelling enough for people to want to come and be part of it. So if you could build that framework that other people support it, which could be anything from your customers. We held a summit a few years ago. We had people saying, we will volunteer if you hold another one of these. We love it. We'll just contribute because we want to experience this. And I have a friend, Jeff Hayes, that does documentaries, where he said, hey, I want people to be more vested in the success of the documentary than even me, because people not only help which they support, he says, but if their own contribution to it helps them win, then that becomes a win then play strategy for him. And he does a lot of that through Indiegogo and some of these where they're pre-buying and you get producer credits and stuff like that. So look, cycle of creation, we're going from idea to concept when it's more concrete and formalized and it can be shared, from concept to framework where there's actually an architecture of how this could be produced. Who's responsible for what? There's objectives. There's operations that fulfill those objectives. There's people that take those initiatives so that you know what needs to happen. And I shared a lot of questions of how you can move it from an asset to a concept, an idea to a concept. And all we're looking each step of the way is if you lack capabilities or you lack clarity, it's either mental capital or relationship capital. So it could be a mentor in that particular industry. That might bring the mental capital and relationship capital. It might be hiring that brings out relationship capital. That might be an independent contractor, or that might be a full-time employee, or it might be your existing team or the existing platforms that you have. But see, I get excited about this because this is the right thing to do in investing, rather than going investing in something outside of your business, outside of your practice, where you don't have control over what happens in the boardroom. You don't know everything that's happening. Now you have a lot more control. You know a lot more about what's happening here. You're investing in yourself, and this is what it means to invest in yourself and grow that business. So how do we move from the framework to a product, service, or experience? That's the next phase. Idea to concept, concept to framework, framework to product, service, or experience. Now, when there's a product, service, or experience, that's once again, the relationship capital is the end user. A lot of times the mental capital is what benefit they get from this and knowing it exists. But then we're going to go right back to the beginning and say, how do we take what already exists and make it better? Goes back to the idea phase, the concept, the framework. So that's the cycle of creation and the circular motion here. We've got mental capital added, relationship capital added, because we're looking for capabilities, we're looking for deeper value, we're looking for greater reach, we're looking for more automation, we're looking for more efficiency. It's just a constant cycle of improvement. And the way that you win and play is that you're selling this up front. So you might be a doctor that if you add one supplement, it makes a big difference, not only to your bottom line, but it's something your patients can get that if they weren't getting it from you might go somewhere else. That's a very simple example. Or if right now you lead your industry, you're the amazing person in that industry, you could become a game changer and a transformer of that industry. Not like a transformer like the cartoon, but like you could transform the industry from a standpoint of business to business. What if you just took everything you did and you started to train the trainers? You started to educate people within your industry so it becomes more B2B because you're showing them what you've done, and that could even become a digital asset, which is much more leverageable rather than maybe a service business that's very one-on-one. So you can use this in your existing business systems to be more profitable. Now, I want to share a few more pieces with this because these are my ultimate win then play questions. As I get towards the final phases and I've gone through a few of these segments, well, I like to ask several questions to figure out how do I profit up front with this? So one of the questions is there any way I can implement this idea with little to no input of time, money, or resources? I'm just asking that, right? How can I do this with as little input as possible? Now, I read a book about minimum viable product or minimum viable program. That could be one idea around it, right? So, or you're getting the money up front and you're delegating a lot of this. So it's not money that's coming out of your pocket to do it. Number two, who on your team has a sole purpose that aligns with the implementation of this idea where you could delegate it to them and they own it almost like it's their own business, the initiative of this idea? Number three, how can it be systematized? In today's technological world, is there a way that could support it through technologies where you can go from one-to-one to one-to-many, or virtually versus in person? When you look at Wealth Factory, I mean, we do webinars, we have a weekly publication, we have a video library of amazing resources, we have all these things that can produce even while we sleep, that people could digest and utilize and gain value from, even if we're not face-to-face. That's one-to-many technology. We also have a virtual family office concept, which is these financial advisors all over the world, whether it's investment advisors, cash flow specialists, whether it's tax accountants or attorneys, or, risk managers. We vetted them, and no matter where you live within the United States, they can work with you in your state from the comfort of your home, whether that's through Skype, Zoom, go to webinar like we're on today, or a phone call, that we're no longer limited by geographic, capabilities. We could say who's the best and actually bring that to someone. So number four, who do you know that would perceive these ideas as an opportunity? Like, is there already an existing structure? Is there already someone that you could tap into their distribution system to bring that in and be profitable up front? One of my friends, Brendan Bouchard, we spoke at an event with Richard Branson, the Dalai Lama, F.W. de Klerk, Stephen Covey, like just a who's who. And I remember talking to him, he had a whole program on partnership. He said a lot of big companies aren't that innovative. They're looking for innovation. And if you could bring the innovation, you can plug into their distribution system. So are there already people that would get a win by you building this, that you could have a strategic relationship, a strategic partnership, or revenue type situation with them, right? Who will pay up front for future products or service that result from this idea? So who's willing to pay now, maybe even at a discounted amount, to be so you could be profitable from day one, and they'll get it when it's ready because they paid less, but they paid today. Or based upon past interaction, who will trust in your recommendation enough to just get involved with this right now? Or how can you create and promote this idea such that the most people would hear about it in the shortest period of time? Like these are the types of questions to help you win and play. So the cycle of creation uses the value equation. Mental capital times relationship capital equals financial capital. It doesn't take money to make money. It takes innovation, ingenuity, and value. So we move from idea to concept once it's more formalized, concrete, and shared. Could be an outline, could be a Google document, could be a number of things. It could be a video that's put online, whatever it might be. We use mental and relationship capital to develop that. Then we build a framework where other people can come in and support. They can help build it. They can be part of the process. Then it becomes a product, service, or experience in the marketplace. And then finally, we just go through that cycle again. The Super Bowl sold out before the game even happened. That's win then play, right? The Statue of Liberty came over from France to the United States. It'd be laying in the Hudson River if it wasn't for a few New York magazines saying, would you like to donate and be the first to get your visitor pass? And that built the visitor center, and those people showed up. So it was already sold out from day one. How can you apply this and do this in your own life? Now, as you get good at this, one of the things you're going to find, and I'll go ahead and let's see, maybe I'll even share my screen on this. Let me pull it up here. This is shocking, but I actually have a PowerPoint, which is not like me, you know, but let's see here. So this is a little bit on the cycle of creation, but I really want to focus on is the idea optimizer. So as you get a lot of ideas, this helps you narrow down and choose which ones to move forward with. So if we begin, just this is a scale of 1 to 10. So 100 would be a perfect fit, and then you create your own benchmark. The first one is how much passion does this implementation of this idea inspire for you, 1 to 10? What is the idea's potential for profitability from a 1 to 10, right? Is it worth it? Is the juice worth the squeeze? Number 3, how many people would be impacted by this idea? The more people, the more scalability, the more leverage, the more upside potential. Does this idea complement any of your other business activities? On a scale of 1 to 10, you could rate that. Are there areas where you can delegate the work of implementing to other people on a scale of 1 to 10? Can you implement technologies to automate this idea on a scale of 1 to 10? Can you implement additional spin-offs, or is there additional things that come about because this exists? That could be like us, doing a virtual summit coming up, but also filming it and turning it into a video product afterwards. Does this fulfill your personal or business mission? That's a big one. Will the idea be profitable quickly? So not only will it be profitable, but how quickly will it be profitable? And do you have the capital, whether that's mental capital or relationship capital? You know how to create that financial capital right out the gate. So this is something you can score on a scale of 1 to 10, and I'll send this to the team because I'm sure there will be some people that want to see this and have access to it. And it was a little bit grainy on my screen. So we'll make sure you have access to that document so you can kind of run through this. But this is the cycle of creation. This is investing in the new economy. These rules maybe didn't matter as much 5 years ago. They're going to matter more now than ever before. There will be a transfer of wealth moving into the next year or two. You could be on the right side of the transfer or the wrong side. The people on the wrong side of the transfer and the wrong side of history are still thinking that hard work solves everything. They're still thinking they've got to have the money to make money. They're thinking that if they just hustle enough, that one day it's going to pay off. And they sacrifice far too much, and they're going to be fatigued at the time that they shouldn't be fatigued. Or you can profit first. You can use the cycle of creation to figure out your best capabilities and opportunities to make money now, to build momentum, to be profitable up front and recurring as time goes on. And it doesn't require all of your capital be tied up. You just go through the questions, make sure it's the idea that's right for you, develop that idea up front, use it and test it on the very people that are writing you checks so it can be profitable now. With that profitability, you can expand it, grow it, and make it an even better program, product, or service. And it's the very people that are raising their hands saying, I like what you do. I want more of what you do. Will you please serve and give me more value? And you're like, yes, and you make money from that. So feel free to start asking questions. I know I just, and it looks like you guys didn't see my screen. So we will just send that document out. So we will make sure to get you that PDF, and we did record this. So let's see. Hello from Washington State. Good to have you here, Jewel. Hoping there's a one sheet for these questions available. Jeremy, we're going to get this the presentation off to you guys that is in PowerPoint to Nordy's displeasure, who is an Apple fan that's running this. I can barely take notes fast enough. Is our free PDF part of the questions? Jewel, you better believe it. Definitely have that. So I'll get that in the team's hands here. If there's any other questions, feel free to start asking those questions now, and be happy to answer those questions. So I'll start hitting share here to get this off to the team. All right, I just sent that. So I've done what I need to do there. Let's see here. How does this program differ from other programs you offer? We're not really offering a program here today. We're just sharing something that we do offer within our programs, whether it's our Wealth Architecture Premium program whether that's our Freedom Fast Track program. We are now integrating and teaching this inside of those programs, especially when people have a business scale strategist. So the cycle of creation is just an iteration of what we offer. It's something that I've been doing since 2006, and now that I'm writing the book, want to share more of it. So it's not a individual program per se as integrated into our programs. We're constantly looking to evolve, add value, and this is part of that. Is there an idea, service, etc., that this won't work for in your experience, Melody? I mean, there's a possibility that there's ideas or services that it wouldn't work for simply because either it's so new and innovative that people don't know what they're getting until they experience it. So that could be an issue. Or there could be some legal ramifications and regulations around certain offers or things that might be particularly in the medical field, for example. So you have to check with compliance on those kind of things. But you know, the best part about it is I once did an event where I had a mentor want me to co-present with him, and he wanted to create a program with me. I said, before we create a program, let's just create an outline, let's film one video, and let's go test it out. So we were on a stage in front of 900 people, and we went over time because he was getting excited, and we didn't have time to talk about the program. So we didn't end up building it and offering it. So it let us know that that was not the right program to build, or we weren't the right partnership to build that. So it also is good because you can stop before going and putting all your resources, building something and finding out you're building the wrong thing. Reminds me of agile software development idea, plan versus value driven. Philip, yeah, thanks for the insight, Philip, there and the statement. If there's any questions, I see Tom is typing a few in right now. What's the title of the new book? The new book is called Win Then Play. We'll be probably having you guys help us and vote on some of the subtitles unless we just find one that we totally nail, but I've got like 10 that are just sitting in the manuscript right now. The manuscript is done. I'm now going through and editing it, and this is where the work gets a little bit more difficult, but be watching for the pre-sale that'll be coming out soon. Can you give a quick description on how you set pricing? I feel like I'd be pulling a number out of the sky. Christy, that's kind of what a lot of entrepreneurs do. And there's some really good books out there on pricing. Matt, our CMO, had read one. So Tom, if you remember what that was, or Matt, type it in here and I'll let her know about that book. But I remember when my early mentors, Dan Sullivan, said he determines pricing by saying a number that scares him. If people go, great, then he says that's twice a year if they don't blink. So it wasn't really it wasn't the best way to price necessarily. But usually what's nice about this is you might do too high or too low. You can adjust based upon what's going on as you're testing this out, but it's called Confessions of a Pricing Man. So that's the book that might be helping you out with pricing, Confessions of a Pricing Man. Hi, Financial Jesus, Mike. There's my buddy Mike teasing me about being Financial Jesus. You couldn't be more right. Started using this approach in my new company and kicking myself that I didn't do it earlier. How can I get an advanced copy of your upcoming book? Well, Mike, you and I are buddies. As soon as I get through this version of the edits, I'll put you in the reader group and have you give some feedback, because I know you've given me other good feedback about the program and everything. Mike and I met on a flight where we were stuck on a runway in Toronto because there was an ice storm last April, and we sparked a friendship from ice storm. So I was thankful for that. Let's see, any other questions coming in? Looks like there might, oh, that's it. All right, everyone. Well, that's our 30-minute State of Wealth webinar today. Hope you're having a great day. Go out there, win then play, implement the cycle of creation, idea to concept, concept to framework, framework to product, service, or experience, and then just keep moving through that by adding mental and relationship capital, profit at every turn. How can you profit first and up front? And especially with an economy that changes, get that feedback immediately from people writing a check, being willing to adjust on the fly. And Barbara says, awesome, thanks. I appreciate you for attending and for investing in yourself. This is Garrett Gunderson signing off.